Hey everybody, it's Michael. I'm back again with another one of my walkthrough videos, and today I would like to show you Orléans. Orléans was released at Essen this year. It's by Rainer Stockhausen, published by DLP Games. It's for 2 to 4 players, ages 12 and up, and it plays in about 90 minutes. The version that I have here has both English and German rules. Text on the game components is only in German, but that's only names of buildings basically, so that doesn't affect the gameplay. On the website they say that they are sold out at the publisher level and they expect new copies in December, so you might be able to find a copy somewhere else at a retailer or so, or you can also basically pre-order one from the new print run on the homepage directly, and I think they ship anywhere in the world. Thematically, the game is set in the city of Orléans in France. Joan d'Arc doesn't make an appearance in the game. Basically the players are trying to assert their dominance, which is represented by victory points, in engaging in different activities like building a trade network all over France, trading goods, earning money, help with communal projects, and acquire new buildings. Mechanically this is done by a bag building mechanism. So basically you have a bag and you start with a certain amount of followers that go into your bag. Then in any given round you draw a certain amount of followers from that bag and you can use them to activate different actions, and those actions might get you new followers, better followers, which you put into your bag again, hoping to draw them on subsequent turns. And I guess it's just a coincidence that this is the year where not one, not two, but at least 3 bag building games were released, the other 2 being Hyperborea and the King's Pouch. So hopefully by now you're curious how this game plays, so let me show you exactly that by doing a full 3-player game. Have fun! So I've set up a 3-player game, and as always let's take a brief look at the components first, starting with the game board in the middle. On the right half we have a map of France. Everybody starts with a merchant in Orléans, and then we have other cities and they are connected by either waterways or roads. And on each of these spaces on a connection we've put one random good, and some spaces have a 4, and since this is a 3-player game we left those spaces empty. Then over here we first have a stack of event tiles which will also mark the course for the game, so once all of these 18 tiles are gone the game will be over. And then we have different tracks and different followers, and whenever you hire a new follower you also get to advance your marker of the track one space to the right, and that will also give you a benefit on top of getting a new follower. An exception are the monks, you just get them, they don't have a track. Then over here we have a supply of good tiles and technology tiles, and down here we have a development track. Then over here we have a supply of money. We have 1 citizen tile which will be awarded at the end of the game, but there are other citizen tiles that players can get during the game, and I'll talk about those in a minute. Then we have 2 types of locations. One stack with the tiles that have a Roman numeral 2 and those with a 1. And you don't have to shuffle these, basically they're all available and the players can look through them at any time they want. Then over here we have the beneficial deeds board. Basically these are communal projects where everybody can send their followers, and whenever you send a follower there you get 1 small bonus, and once a project is complete those citizen tiles are awarded. And finally each player also has their own stuff. Let's take a look at the blue player. He is the starting player. Everybody starts with 5 coins, 10 trading stations, a bag which is empty at the start of the game, and then this board where you have different locations where you can send your followers to. And in your market you already start with 4 followers, 1 craftsman, a boatman, a farmer and a merchant. Now the goal of the game is to get the most victory points, and there are no victory points awarded during the game, at least not directly, but at the end each of the different goods will be a certain amount of victory points. So for example brocade will be 5 and grain will be 1, each coin will be 1, and then you add the trading stations that you've built on the map and the citizen tiles that you acquired and multiply this by your development level. And the players start basically at 1, but as soon as they cross these stars on the development track their development level advances. And then we can already start the game. 1 round has 7 different phases. The first is hourglass, so basically we flip over the topmost tile, and this will always be the same in the first round. As you can see it has a lighter background. This is a pilgrimage, so in the first round players won't be able to hire monks. Then we have a census. And for that we look on the farmer track, and if there's a player who is ahead alone, then he will get 1 coin, and if you have a single player who is behind alone, then he has to lose a coin. And since all the players are currently tied, nobody gets or loses a coin. Then everybody would draw followers from their bag. However, in the first round we don't do that, because all the followers we have are already on the market. Then we do planning. And the players would do this simultaneously, so let's just follow the blue player while he does it, and then for the other players we'll just see the results later. When we plan, you take your followers and put them on matching spaces on the different locations. So for example, with my craftsman, farmer and boatman, I could trigger the action of the village. Now the boat, the wagon and the guild house would all allow me to interact on that board, either building a trade post where I currently am with my merchant or move somewhere else, but they all require a knight and players don't start with one, so these are not possible at the moment. Neither is the scriptorium for the same reason. The town hall would allow you to send people off to the beneficial deeds, but the followers that are marked in your color cannot be sent off, so this is not an option either. So basically blue is left with doing any of these 5 actions, would all gain him a new follower. However, he can't use the cloister because A, for that you would need a scholar, and B, because of the pilgrimage event, because that would give him a monk. So basically it's down to these 4. Getting a knight would be interesting because then we could start doing those actions. However, the additional benefit of a knight, and remember we would advance 1 space, would be to draw 5 followers out of a bag at the start of the next turn. And that would be a bit of a waste, because if we hire a knight, then we wouldn't use our carpenter, so he would stay here. So we'd actually only have 4 followers to draw from the bag. Since a trader would allow us to get a new location where we can put our followers in, let's actually do that. So we want to get a new merchant or trader, so we want to activate the village, so we need a farmer, a boatman and a carpenter. The trader can stay here. He is blocking one of the spaces on the market, and at the start of the turn we can only draw as many characters as our limit allows, but also as many as fit in the market. So basically he's wasting a space, but we're not in danger of filling our market right now. We could also put him out already, but then we'd lose the flexibility of seeing what we want to do next turn. So let's just leave him here. And now blue has done all his planning, and so have the other players. So we can move into phase number 5, actions. Starting with the start player, each player will take an action, that is activate one of the locations that he has filled up with followers, and then it's the next player's turn, and if you can't or don't want to do an action, then you pass and then you're out, and we're done when everybody has passed. So we activated the village. So all these followers will be put in our bag. And then we can decide to take either a boatsman, a carpenter or a trader. We wanted a trader, so this goes into our bag as well. Then we get to advance 1 space, and then we get the benefit, which is we can build a new location, but on this space we can only choose from the tiles with 1. On the second space we could already choose from the ones with a 2. And as I already said, these aren't in any particular order, so blue can now look through this whole stack and decide what he wants. And he decides to take the wool manufacturer, where with a boatman and a trader he can manufacture 1 piece of wool, which is worth 4 victory points. However, there isn't that much left in the supply, because a lot got randomly put out on the map, but let's just give it a shot. Green activated the village as well, but he wants a carpenter. And whenever you get a new craftsman, you get one of these technology tiles, which you can use to permanently replace one of your followers on your board. However, you can never replace monks, and with the first tile you get, you have to replace a farmer. But this doesn't happen right now. It just goes into green supply, and then when he has passed, which will happen very soon, then he can place the tile. Yellow activated the university, so he gets a new scholar. And whenever you get a scholar, you get an amount of development points. In this case 2, so it advances 2 spaces. That doesn't immediately gain him anything, but he's 1 space away from getting that citizen, and also very close to his 2nd development level. Then everybody passes, because nobody can play another action, so green will have to place the technology tile right now, so it has to replace a farmer. There can't be more than 1 technology tile per location, that is not a problem, he's placing the first one. So what he does is he replaces the farmer on the village, because the village is something that you probably use a lot during the course of the game. Then we go on to phase number 6, which is resolving the event. However, the pilgrimage event is always active during phase number 5, so there's actually nothing to resolve right now. So we move into phase number 7, where we just advance the start player marker. Then it's a new round, so first we get a new event. And it's a pilgrimage again, so again, this round nobody will be able to hire a monk. Then we don't have a census, or rather nothing happens because nobody has acquired a farmer yet. And then everybody draws 4 followers from the back, which is everything, and places them into the market. And then it's phase 4, planning, so let's see what the blue player does. The blue player decides to hire a scholar at the university. And then also uses wool manufacturer. Then actions, starting with green, he activates the village, so these 2 are discarded. He decides to take yet another craftsman. So now he gets another technology tile, and with that he can replace anybody except monks. Yellow would have liked to use a scholar and a trader to get a monk, of course, but that's not possible this round, so all he does is get yet another scholar. So now he gets 3 more development points. So he receives the citizen tile and now his development level is 2. Blue also gets a scholar. And so does green. Yellow is done, so he passes. Blue gets a piece of wool. Green passes. And then blue passes as well. Green decides to place his technology tile on the trader space at the university. And then the shield marker is passed to yellow, and we move into turn number 3. So we start off with an event. Taxes. Everybody will have to pay 1 money for each 3 goods they possess. But right now only the blue player has 1 good. So that actually won't cost him anything. Then again, nothing happens at the census, so we move right into drawing persons, and everybody draws 4. Yellow only had these 4 followers in the bag to begin with, so this round he has all 6 available. Blue ended up with a boatman, a merchant, a scholar and a craftsman, and so did green. Now then we move into planning, but I'll actually skip that from now on and just show you the results of the action phase. Yellow first activates his monastery, so these 2 are gone, and he gets a new monk. And as already mentioned, monks don't carry any other benefit, but they are wildcards, so basically every other character can be replaced by them. Blue does the same, and so does green. Then yellow activates the village. He decides to take a merchant. So he gets to select 1 location tile, and he selects the sacristy. If he places a monk here, he is able to ignore the event of the current round. Blue activates the farmhouse, so he gets another farmer. The farmer track is useful for the census, but also whenever you advance, you receive the depicted good, in this case 1 wheat. And finally green activates the village. He also wants a trader. And he selects a windmill, where 2 craftsmen will generate 2 money and a development point. Then we're in phase number 6. The event doesn't do anything because nobody has at least 3 goods. So we simply move the shield over to the blue player and advance into turn number 4. The event is plague. That's not nice. Basically everybody would have to draw 1 character from their bag, and if it isn't one of their specially marked characters that they started with, they would lose him. Then, since blue is ahead on the farmer's track, during the census he will actually get 1 coin from the supply. And then once again everybody draws 4 characters from their bag. And after drawing, in addition to his scholar that he saved from the last round, yellow ended up with these followers. Blue just got a bunch of quote-unquote normal characters, and green also got a monk. Then everybody's done with planning, so blue can take his first action, and actually he only has 1 action. He decided to activate the castle and get a knight. So these 3 are removed. Then he gets a knight, and next round he'll be able to draw 5 followers. Plus, hopefully, when he draws the knight, he'll be able to start doing actions on the map. Green activates the windmill. That'll give him 2 coins and 1 development point. Then yellow, the monk, stays on the sacristy until the event phase. So the only other action here is the village. He decides to get another trader. So he can select a new location, and now he can also choose from the better or advanced ones. And he decides to take the school. That will basically turn his scholars into wildcards. They can now replace everything but monks. Blue already has to pass. And then green activates the village with these 2. He decides to take yet another craftsman. He gets another technology tile. Then yellow passes, green passes, so he's able to place it. And he decides to replace the scholar on the monastery space. Then it's the event, so let's see what happens. Yellow simply decides to remove his monk from the sacristy, so he's able to ignore that event. Blue reaches into his bag and draws one of his standard characters, so he's lucky because you can never lose them, so they're just put back. And green draws a craftsman, so that one's returned to the supply. But the marker actually stays where it is. And then we advance into the next round where green will be starting player again. The new event is a trade day where everybody will get 1 money for each of their trade posts built. So far that hasn't happened at all, but maybe it will until the end phase. Blue gets a coin from the census. Next up is drawing followers, and blue can draw 5. And this is what everybody ended up with after drawing. So let's move into the planning, and after that, actions. Green activates the monastery with a trader, so he gets yet another monk. Yellow also gets a new monk. The only thing blue decided to do is actually use the guild house to build a trading post by replacing a knight with a monk. So he takes one of his houses, puts it into Orléans, because that is where his merchant is, and he can only build trading posts where your merchant is, and there can only be 1 trading post per city, but in Orléans everybody can have 1. These 3 followers remain unused this turn. Then green activates his windmill again for 2 coins and a development point, so he's also now at level 2. And finally yellow also decides to take a knight. Then everybody passes, resolve the event, so blue gets 1 coin, and then yellow is the starting player. Now the event for the next round is a harvest. Everybody either has to pay one of the food goods, so grain, cheese or wine, or $5. Unless of course they can protect them from that event. And once again, blue gets a coin from the census. Everybody draws, green is the only one who can only draw 4. And for blue it's lucky he can only quote-unquote draw 5, because then his marketplace is entirely full. Then everybody has drawn, and I think it's actually the last time I'll show you what everybody drew. Let's move into planning and then actions. Yellow took it slow, he only performed 1 action, so he activates the farmhouse. The scholar replaced the boatman, so he gets a new farmer, gets to advance here, receive a grain, which is important for the harvest event. Blue first takes a new monk, green also takes a monk, then yellow is already done. Blue uses the ship action, so he can move his merchant along a waterway. He chooses this one down here, moves to Briare, and then whenever you move along a path where there's 1 or more goods, you get to take 1 of them, and of course he takes the brocade, because that is worth 5 victory points. Then green also activates the farmhouse, gets a farmer, gets to advance, gets wheat for the event. Then we're actually in the event phase, so everybody decides to give up the wheat they've collected, so nobody has to pay the $5, and then blue becomes the starting player. The event will be income, where everybody will receive money equal to their development level. So it would be good for blue to advance a little bit more. Then at the census, nobody gets or loses money. And then we're already into drawing followers, placing them, and then actions. Blue first gets a new monk, and so does green. Yellow hires a new scholar at the university, so he gets 4 development points. And since he crossed this space, 3 money. Then blue builds a new trading post. Green hires a new craftsman. So once again he gets a technology tile. Yellow activates the scriptorium, where he gets a development point. Blue gets a new knight. So he now draws 6 characters each turn. Green is already done, so he can place the technology tile. He decides to put it here. And finally yellow also gets a new knight. Then with the income event, green gets 3, green gets 2, and blue gets 1. And then the starting player moves over to green. Then it's round number 8, and we get another harvest. The census doesn't do anything, and then green draws 4, and yellow and blue draw 6 characters each. Green gets a new farmer, as well as another wheat. Yellow could have used the monk in the sacristy to prevent the harvest from affecting him, but instead he decided to also get a new farmer and a wheat, and so did blue. Then green gets a new scholar and 3 development points, so he also gets 3 money. Yellow gets yet another monk, the second to last one. Blue uses the wagon to move his merchant across a road. The only way he can move from here on a road is north. So he gets to collect the brocade. Green gets his first knight. And then everybody passes. In the event, everybody simply gives up the wheat they just collected, and then yellow becomes the starting player. The next event, once again a harvest, and since each event appears 3 times in the entire game, that's the last harvest that will happen. The census, again, nothing happens, everybody has advanced, and I got the feeling that at the next round things might not look too different if everybody decides to advance and take a cheese. And then we're already drawing tiles, planning and doing actions. Now, during the planning, something interesting happens because we only have 1 monk remaining. The question is, who will activate the monastery first, if at all? And normally planning is done simultaneously, but if players want, they can insist that it happens in player order. So the yellow player plans first, and since he wants to activate the monastery, the other players will see that it is no use to activate the monastery as well. Yellow first activates the monastery to get the last monk. Blue builds a new trading post. Green uses a wagon to move his merchant over to the west, collecting the wine. Yellow also builds a trading post. Blue uses a wagon to move back west into Orléans, collecting the grain. Green gets another knight, so it's also up to 6. And then finally yellow also activates a wagon to move up north and also collect the grain. And then during the event, everybody gives up a piece of food. Nobody has to pay the 5 money. And then blue is the starting player again. And we're actually halfway through the game. At the start of round 10, we get another plague. During the census, nothing happens, although different from what I anticipated, nobody actually advanced. And then everybody gets to draw 6 characters, we do planning, and then actions. Blue first activates the wool manufacturer to get another piece of wool. Green activates the village to hire another trader. So he also gets a new tile and he decides to build the laboratory, which for a scholar and a craftsman will produce another technology tile, which is also the reason why he kept those scholars around, because now that there are no more monks, the monastery is not as interesting. For him it wasn't anyway, so basically the only use he has for scholars now is here in the scriptorium. So he could have actually sent them away over to the beneficial deeds, but for now he decides to keep them around, one reason being the laboratory. Yellow kept 2 traders around and also placed a monk in the sacristy, so he only has 1 action, and that is activate the guild house. So he can build a trading post up here. Then blue activates his village. He also wants a trader. And he decides to build the horse wagon, which is basically like the normal wagon, except it doesn't need a farmer. Then green activates a wagon to move north and collect the brocade. And then everybody's already done with their actions. Then we have the plague event. Yellow simply puts the monk back into the bag, and that's it. Blue has to draw. And once again he's lucky, he drew one of his own starting characters. Green has to draw. And once again he's unlucky because it's a monk. And so, at least for 1 action in the next round, monks are available again. And then the starting player moves over to green. Then the new event is income. So at least blue and maybe green might consider bumping up their development level. At the census nothing happens. And then everybody draws 6 tiles again. Green first takes the last monk. Yellow hires a scholar, so he gets 5 development points. So that's 4 money. Blue uses his horse wagon to move south and collect the brocade. Green gets another knight. Yellow uses a wagon to move over here and collect the wine. Blue also hires a scholar, gets 3 development points. Green hires another trader, the second to last one, and he builds the cellar, or basically the town hall cellar, which earns money. Yellow is already done. It seems blue made a little mistake here, so because there's no farmer, so let's just say he used those 2 to activate the farmhouse and get a farmer. So he gets a cheese and is once ahead in the census. Green activates the laboratory, so he gets a technology tile. Then green has sent a scholar to the town hall, so he is sent to the beneficial deeds and decides to send him to battle the plague, and that'll give him 2 money right now for placing it, and whoever fills the last spot for any deed will collect the citizen. Then everybody's done, so green places the technology tile, and it decides to put it on the scholar on the laboratory. Then for the income event, yellow gets 4 money and green and blue get 2. And then yellow becomes the starting player. Our new event is pilgrimage. Nobody can hire any monks. That doesn't matter anyway. Blue gets a coin from the census, and then green draws 7 and the other draw 6 characters. Yellow builds another trading station. Blue gets another knight. Green activates laboratory, and he gets yet another technology tile. Yellow hires another scholar, so that's the last one he can actually hire. He gets 6 development points, so he receives the citizen tile. It's the second one. Blue left the guild house unactivated because there's a craftsman missing, but he can still send a scholar off to the beneficial deeds, and he decides to send him here, so he also gets 2 money. Green also decided to clear his market, so these 2 knights were sent to these actions, but they're not active yet. However, he decides to hire yet another knight, so he stays at 7, but he gets the citizen. Yellow is already done, and so is blue, but green decides to hire the last trader and build the bathhouse. And I'll be using a suggested variant for the bathhouse that is not the official variant, but the one that they use during testing, where if you have the bathhouse and you want to activate it, it has to be the first thing that you activate in a round. Then everybody has passed, so he can still place that technology tile, and he decides to replace the scholar on the cellar. We've already dealt with the event, it was pilgrimage, so we can simply move into the next round where blue will be the starting player again. And our event will be a pestilence again. Blue once again gets a coin from the census, and we draw tiles. Blue decides to hire a craftsman, so he also gets a technology tile, but it has to replace a farmer. Green first activates the bathhouse. He gets to draw 3 tiles from his bag. So we have a trader, a craftsman, and a monk. He can place up to 2 of them on action spaces, but not the bathhouse. So he decides to place the monk on here, and the craftsman over here, and then the farmer from the bathhouse, and the other character are returned to the bag. Yellow activates the scriptorium, so he gets 1 development point. Blue builds another trading post. Green activates laboratory, gets another tile. Yellow sends a trader off to beneficial deeds. He decides to choose this space because nobody has a neutral boatsman yet, so there's no danger that somebody will fill up those spaces. Blue still needs a boatman here, so he can't activate that one, but he can send his scholar off to the beneficial deeds, and he decides to send him over here to this peace treaty project, which will also give him 2 money. Green activates the cellar, so he gets 4. Yellow activates the village to get a boatman actually, the first one in the entire game. And boatmen simply give you money, so he receives 2. Then blue is already done, so he has to pass. Green has lots of half-activated actions, but he can actually move his wagon. Now, he could either move east and collect the grain, but then he'd be a bit boxed in. So he decides to not get a good, but move down here, and he has more options later on. Yellow is already done, so we're back to green, who still has a trader to send to the beneficial deeds. And for him, he decides to send him to build the cathedral, and that's also 2 money. Then once everybody has passed, green decides to put the technology tile on here, and blue puts his tile on here. Then for the pestilence event, yellow once again removes the monk. Blue reaches into his bag. This time he's not so lucky, a monk is gone. And green, also a monk. And then the starting player is passed over to green. And we're into the next round, where we have a trade day again. Blue gets a coin from the census, and we draw characters and plan actions. Green starts off by using the bathhouse. He gets to draw 3. He decides to use the farmer on the castle, and then it doesn't really matter either the monk or the scholar on the scriptorium. Yellow activates the monastery to get yet another monk. Blue activates the village to hire another craftsman, along with the technology tile. Green hires a monk. Once again the last one. Yellow activates the village for yet another boatman. so he gets 3. Blue is already done because these actions are not fully activated. This one is, but he actually decides to keep it around for next turn because he plans to move over the water first and then over the road here. Green activates the laboratory for yet another technology tile. Yellow is also already done. Then green activates the cellar to collect 4 money. Then the scriptorium for 1 development point. Then the castle for another knight. So he's now at the end and gets to draw 8 tiles finally. Then with the guild house he can build another trading post. And then finally he uses the wagon to move over here and collect the wool. And once he's passed, he uses the technology tile on the windmill. And blue also still has to place his one, and he decides to replace the boatsman on the ship action. Then we have the trading day event. So green receives 1, yellow gets 3, and blue gets 4. Then yellow becomes the starting player, and we start the new round off with taxes. As usual, blue receives 1 money from the census, and then everybody draws their tiles. Yellow uses a wagon to move down here, and he collects the wool. Blue activates his boat to move down here and collect the wine. Green uses the bathhouse. He decides to put 1 farmer here and the other one here. Then these 2 are returned to the back. Yellow is building a trade post, and so is blue and green. And then yellow sends these 2 off to help defeat the plague. So he gets 4 money, and since he placed the last tile, also this citizen. And it's a 3rd. Blue activates his horse wagon, moves over here and collects the brocade. Green also activates a wagon. Now he could move up here and collect the cheese, but then he'd be stuck in the corner and couldn't build any more trading posts. So he decides to take the wheat here. Yellow is already done. Blue hires a knight. The last one actually. Green gets 4 coins. Blue gets a scholar. So he also gets 4 development points. And 3 money. Green sends a trader to the beneficial deeds to collect 2. Blue hires another craftsman. That comes with a technology tile, and since he's already done, he can immediately place it, and he decides to put it here. Then we have the event. Green has 3 tiles, so he has to pay 1. Yellow only has 2, so he doesn't have to pay anything. And blue has 8, so he has to pay 2. Starting player advances over to blue, and our new event is income. Again, blue wins the census for 1 gold, and then we draw tiles. Blue got a bit unlucky and didn't get the matching followers to activate any action, but he can send 2 craftsmen off to the beneficial deeds. He's sending 1 to building the cathedral for 2 money, and 1 down here to the sewer system for 1 development point. Green activates the bathhouse. He decides to use a craftsman and a farmer. Yellow first activates a boat, moves over here, takes the wool. Blue is already done. Green activates the cellar for 4 money. Yellow builds a new trade post. Green uses a boat to move over here and collect the wine. Then yellow is done. Green decides not to activate the guild house, but the town hall instead, and sends these 2 off. And he decides to send them to the astronomy project. There is 1 scholar missing, but since he'll be starting player the next round, he's hopefully that he'll actually get 1. So he gets 2 money. And finally he activates the windmill for another 2 money and a development point. Then everybody's done, so we have the income event. Green and blue both receive 3, and yellow gets 5. Then green becomes starting player, and we move into the second to last round, where we have a trade day again. Once again, blue gets money from the census, and everybody draws their tiles. Sadly, green's gamble didn't pay off. He didn't get a scholar, and by the way, you can't, when placing on the board of beneficial deeds, replace anything with something else, so monks don't work, at least as replacement for scholars. So yellow will probably be able to get that citizen. Green uses the bathhouse, decides to take 1 farmer and put it here, and decides to put the knight on here. Then these 2 are returned. Yellow sends the scholar up here for 1 money, and more importantly the citizen. And then he sends the trader over here. He could take the money, but he decides to take the development point instead, hoping that he'll get the other two next turn. Blue builds a new trading post. Green moves by boat, so he collects the cheese. Yellow also moves by boat. He picks up the brocade. Blue also moves by boat. He also gets brocade. Green builds a new trade post. Yellow is already done. Blue gets a new scholar, the last one. But more importantly, he gets 5 development points and 4 money. Green uses a wagon, collects the wool. Blue activates the wool manufacturer, gets the second to last wool. Green gets 4 money. Blue sends his scholar to the beneficial deeds. The only place a scholar can still go is over here at founding a boatsman's guild, and that is 1 money. Green activates the windmill for a development point and 2 money. Then blue is done, and green can still send these 2 off to the beneficial deeds. He decides to take a development point down here, and now he could send his knight simply up here to get 1 money. But there are more interesting spaces. The problem is, if he puts a knight either here or here, then there's only 2 open spaces, and somebody else could fill them and grab the citizen tile. But he's greedy, so he takes 3. Then we have the trade day. So green gets 3, and yellow and blue get 5 each. Correction, blue gets 6. Then we move into the last round, where yellow will be the starting player. Our event will be taxes once again. Blue is still leading on census, and everybody draws their tiles one final time. Before drawing, blue decides to do the following. It's a bit of a gamble, but you can always do this. You can return any characters from action spaces to your market, and then draw that many characters less from your bag. So he would be allowed to draw 7. Now he's only allowed to draw 6, and the reason he does this is he has 2 monks available. There are 2 open spaces for monks on the Popal election, and maybe, just maybe, the yellow player won't be lucky and get those 2. And he is indeed lucky, the yellow player only got 1 monk. Yellow builds a trading post. Blue, of course, sends the 2 monks up here, so he gets 6 coins in the citizen. Green uses the bathhouse. He decides to put the trader on the wagon and the monk in the town hall. Yellow activates the scriptorium for 1 development point. Blue builds a trading post, and so does green. Yellow sends his boatman to work on the sewer system for 1 development point, so receives the 5 money. Blue, he uses a wagon to move down here and collect the wine. Green uses a wagon to collect the wool. Yellow is done. Blue can activate the wool manufacturer, get the final wool from the supply. Green gets 4 coins and another 2 coins plus a development point, so he gets 4 money. And finally he sends the monk to the beneficial deeds, more specifically the peace treaty, for another 2. And then finally we have the event. Green has to pay 2, blue has to pay 4, and yellow has to pay 1. Then finally the citizen tile that was set aside at the beginning of the game is awarded to the player who has the most trading posts, that is blue. And then we can go into the final scoring. First of all, we have the goods. Yellow has 5 and 8 is 13 and 3 is 16. Green has 5 and 12 is 17 and 3 is 20, so 23. And blue has 25 and 16 is 41, 47, 49. Then each money is worth a point, so blue has 46, yellow has 48, and green has 67. And then finally we have trading posts plus citizen tiles times the development level. Green has 4 trading posts, 1 citizen tile, and a development level of 3, so that's 15. Blue has 7 trading posts, 2 citizen tiles, times 4 is 36. And yellow has 6 trading posts, plus 4 citizen tiles, times 5 is 50. So green has 105, yellow has 114, and blue has 131, making him the overall winner. And that was one full 3-player game of Orléans. Let me finally talk a bit more about the tiles that you didn't get to see in the game because they weren't built. We have the shipping company that would activate with a boatsman and provide 1 development point. The library is basically an advanced scriptorium, same activation costs, but gives 2 development points. Then we have 4 more production buildings, just like the wool manufacturer that you saw, that can produce the other 4 goods in the game. The herb garden would allow you to use boatmen to replace the other 3 basic followers. The brewery gives 2 money if you use a monk. And the hospital earns you money according to your development level. The pharmacy can be activated by any follower, and it allows you to exchange up to 3 money for a development point. Then we have the office, which gives you 1 money for each trade post built, basically just like the trade day event. And then we have the gunpowder tower, which extends the market by 2 spaces. So basically, characters you draw in the draw phase can be placed on here, and then you can place them on other actions as usual, or you can also send them off to the beneficial deeds from here, which means that you could send 4 characters in 1 turn to the beneficial deeds. And finally, there is a promo postcard with 2 additional buildings that was handed out at Essen. First is the tavern. Whenever you use the guild house to place a trade station, if you have a trader on the tavern, you can activate it, and then you are allowed to put your trade post in a city where somebody else already has one. And the other one is the depot. At the end of the game, for each complete set of the 5 different goods, you get an additional 5 victory points. So this one encourages you to diversify a little. So I hope you enjoyed this overview. Hopefully you could see that this is not a complex game to play. You have 18 rounds, you have the 7 phases, and what you do in those phases is pretty straightforward. The game gives you a lot of flexibility of what you want to do. Basically, you could start getting technology tiles to hopefully have better actions later on. You could start getting knights to draw more character tiles and get an early opportunity to start grabbing things on the map. You could first go into monks to have wildcards and lots of flexibility. You could start getting traders and building those new locations, which offer additional spaces to put your followers on, and of course interesting and better effects than the buildings already on your board. When comparing it to other deck or bag building games, it is interesting that in Orléans we don't have something like a discard pile. The followers are either in your deck or the bag or available, but as soon as you use them they go back. So the main difference is to the other games, although I don't know how King's Pouch works exactly, that you don't have to go through every single follower in your bag until you start over. So basically, if you have 1 knight in there, it's not guaranteed that at some point it'll come out. Also, in a deck building game, of course, buying new cards is not as exciting as actually using them, because the cards have an effect when you play them. Here, most of the times when you get a new follower, you also get an effect, and sometimes you're just getting the follower for that effect. For example, when you get a trader, most of the time you're actually after getting the new location. The gameplay itself with activating the actions, but also being able to park, quote-unquote, followers on certain actions that are not active yet, or even not using them in the current turn, basically priming them for later use to have some big combos later on, also goes beyond the original simple idea of deck building, that on your turn you play your entire hand and you don't hold any cards back for your next turn. Yes, of course, in further Dominion expansions and of course newer deck building games, there were already mechanisms or effects that would allow you to hold back cards and use some of them in the next turn. One more thing about the buildings. They already introduced a mini expansion with the promo postcard, and on the homepage they mentioned that there might be further buildings in an expansion, maybe, and they suggest a rule for experienced players where at the start of the game each player selects 1 location that won't be in the game this time. And I guess from there people can think about other variants. Maybe you'll have a draft for things that should be in the game or a random decision, but basically the idea is not all buildings will be available in each game, which of course adds to the replayability. And then finally, I guess I should talk about the bathhouse. After the game premiered at Essen, there was a discussion online whether it's overpowered or not, because the original effect is like the one I showed you, but you could use it at any time during your turn. So it would especially be possible that you activate another location first, and then those characters are in the bag, and then with the bathhouse you could, if you're lucky or plan it accordingly, get them out of the bag again and activate that same building once more. And for example, if it's the cellar for 4 money or other powerful second tier buildings. And so on the homepage the designer has, I think, suggested 4 different possibilities. So the official variant is that you no longer draw 3 tiles but only 2, and then you use 1 and put 1 back. So basically you're giving up a farmer to activate the tile and you're getting 1 other character, so basically it's a 1-by-1 trade. You don't get an additional character as you do now, but you're still allowed to use it anytime you want. So double activations are still possible, but it's not as powerful as before. And then the other variant is the one I used, that they used during testing, You are allowed to draw 3 characters, but it has to be the first thing you do, so double activations are no longer possible. Then the third one was that it simply moved from the first to the second tier, and nothing else changes. And the fourth variant, I hope I'm remembering that one correctly, is that the characters that you draw are set aside and you can't use them any longer that turn. So basically, again, double activations are no longer possible. And I think if people feel that the bathhouse is overpowered, personally I'm not sure whether it's overpowered, but I have to admit I haven't played the game that often. People should be able to find their favorite variant among those 4, so I guess this problem should no longer be a big one. And I guess that's already it. So as always, thanks for watching, have fun playing, and until next time, bye bye.